I came home after a week away. My wife was gone. A note on the table said, "I'm in Spain. Don't call me." She took my car. She took my money. She didn't know what I found on her laptop. I smiled and said, "This will end perfectly. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Robert Mercer's truck rattled over the last pothole before his driveway came into view. The Kentucky sky had turned that bruised purple color it got right before dark. 7 days away from home. 7 days of welding steel beams on a bridge 40 miles north. His back ached from the work. His shoulders felt like someone had poured concrete into them and let it set. He pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. The silence hit him first. Then he noticed the porch light. It was off. Kelly always left it on when he was coming home. Always. She'd done it for 3 years without fail. Robert sat in the truck for a moment, his hands still on the steering wheel. The leather felt worn under his palms. He told himself she probably just forgot. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she'd gone to bed early. But something in his gut said otherwise. Robert grabbed his duffel bag from the passenger seat and walked to the front door. His work boots scraped against the concrete steps. The sound seemed too loud in the quiet evening. He put his key in the lock and turned it. The door swung open. The house felt wrong immediately. Not broken into. Not ransacked. Just wrong in a way he couldn't name at first. Robert dropped his duffel by the door and stood in the entryway. He listened for the sound of Kelly moving around upstairs. The shower running. The television on in the bedroom. Anything. Nothing. He walked into the living room. The couch pillows were arranged perfectly. Too perfectly. Kelly never bothered with that kind of thing. She'd throw them on the couch after watching TV and leave them wherever they landed. Robert had teased her about it once. She'd laughed and told him she wasn't running a hotel. But now the pillows sat in exact positions. The throw blanket was folded over the arm of the couch with crisp edges. Robert moved to the kitchen. The sink was empty. No dishes. No coffee mug with lipstick on the rim. Kelly drank 3 cups of coffee every morning, and she always left the last mug in the sink. He'd wash it when he got home from work. It was their routine. He opened the refrigerator. The light spilled out into the dim kitchen. Half the food was gone. The milk she'd bought before he left. The sandwich meat. The yogurt she ate for breakfast. All missing. What remained looked staged. A bottle of ketchup. Some mustard. A jar of pickles he'd opened weeks ago. Robert closed the fridge and stood in the kitchen. His heart rate hadn't changed. His breathing stayed steady. But something cold had started spreading through his chest. That's when he saw the note. It sat on the kitchen table. A single piece of white paper. Folded once. Robert walked over and picked it up. The paper felt normal in his hands. Nothing special about it. Just regular printer paper. He unfolded it. 5 words. Handwritten in Kelly's looping script. "I'm in Spain. Don't call me." No signature. No explanation. No apology. Robert read it again. Then a third time. The words didn't change. He set the note back down on the table and looked around the kitchen again. Everything suddenly made sense in the worst possible way. The arranged pillows. The empty fridge. The missing car. He walked to the window and looked out at the driveway. His truck sat there alone. Kelly's sedan was gone. The spot where she always parked, it was just bare concrete with an oil stain in the shape of her slow leak. Robert pulled his phone from his pocket and opened his banking app. His thumb moved automatically to the joint checking account. The one they'd opened together when they got married. The one where both their paychecks went. The screen loaded. The balance made him blink. Then read it again. $432. He'd left 7 days ago with over $6,000 in that account. His last paycheck had been direct deposited 3 days before he left. Kelly's unemployment payment should have gone in as well. They should have had close to $7,500. Robert scrolled through the transactions. Withdrawal. Withdrawal. Transfer. Withdrawal. All last week. All approved with her login credentials. She'd taken it methodically. Not all at once. That would have triggered alerts. Instead, she'd pulled it out in chunks that stayed just under the bank's automatic fraud detection limits. Smart. Robert locked his phone and set it on the counter. He needed food. He'd stopped for gas on the way home, but hadn't eaten since breakfast. He opened the DoorDash app and tried to order pizza. Card declined. He tried again with a different restaurant. Card declined. Robert opened his wallet and pulled out his debit card. He checked the banking app again. His personal account showed a balance of $68. That was the account he kept separate for his own spending. She shouldn't have had access to it, but she'd been authorized on it 2 years ago when he'd had emergency surgery and needed her to pay bills while he recovered. He'd never removed her access after that. Never thought he needed to. Robert put his wallet away and sat down at the kitchen table. The chair creaked under his weight. He looked at the note again. Those 5 words. So casual, like she was telling him she'd run to the grocery store. His hands rested flat on the table. They didn't shake. He noticed that about himself. When other men might have been throwing things or punching walls, his hands stayed steady. His breathing stayed even. This wasn't panic. Panic was useless. Panic made you sloppy. This was something else. This was his mind shifting into a different gear. The same gear it shifted into when a project went wrong at work. When a measurement came out incorrect or a weld didn't hold. You didn't yell at the metal. You didn't beg the numbers to change. You stepped back. You assessed. You planned. Robert stood up and walked to the spare bedroom. Kelly had used it as an office. Her laptop sat on the desk. The desk they bought at a yard sale and refinished together one weekend. She'd picked the stain color. He'd done the sanding. The laptop was closed. The power cord was still plugged in. She'd left it behind. Robert had never touched her laptop before. She'd been clear about that boundary early in their marriage. Privacy was important to her. She needed her own space, her own things. He'd respected that. Never asked to see her screen. Never picked up her phone. But she'd also never left him a note saying she was in Spain after draining their bank account. Boundaries changed. Robert opened the laptop. The screen lit up. A password prompt appeared. He typed in her birthday, the number she'd used for everything since he'd known her. The same PIN on her debit card. The same code for her phone. The desktop loaded. Robert sat down in the office chair. The same chair where Kelly had spent hours applying for jobs she never seemed to get. Hours scrolling through social media. Hours doing whatever it was she did when he was at work. He moved the cursor to her email. Clicked it open. The inbox was organized into folders. Personal, shopping, subscriptions, and one labeled Simply Plans. Robert clicked on Plans. The emails loaded. The most recent one was from 4 months ago. The subject line read, "Final thoughts before we do this." He opened it. The email was to someone named Bryce. Robert didn't know anyone named Bryce. Kelly had never mentioned that name. The email was long, detailed. It talked about timing, about making sure everything looked normal until the last moment, about not tipping him off, about the money, about Spain being the perfect place to start over because it was far enough away to matter. Robert scrolled down. Kelly's response to an earlier email for Bryce said she'd been planning this for months, that she'd been careful, that Robert wouldn't suspect until it was too late. She was right about that part. Robert closed the email and opened the next folder. This one was labeled Reference. Inside were screenshots, bank statements showing their joint account balance, spreadsheets calculating how much she could take without triggering immediate alerts, notes about what story to tell if anyone asked questions. There were also messages she'd saved, conversations with friends Robert had never met, women who called him controlling because he liked knowing where their money went, women who told Kelly she deserved better, that she was too young to be stuck with someone who worked all the time and came home tired. Robert read through them without emotion. Each message painted him as someone he didn't recognize. A man who demanded too much, who gave too little, who trapped her in a small Kentucky town when she wanted adventure. He thought about their marriage, the actual marriage, not the one she'd written about to strangers. They'd met at a diner outside Lexington. Robert had been eating lunch between job sites. Kelly had been his server. She'd smiled at him, made jokes about the terrible coffee, written her number on his receipt without him asking. Their first date had been miniature golf. She'd beaten him by 6 strokes and laughed so hard she'd cried. Their second date had been a drive through the back roads with the windows down and old country music on a radio. Their third date had been to a movie he couldn't remember because he'd spent the whole time looking at her instead of the screen. They'd gotten married at the courthouse 10 months later. Kelly wore a white dress she'd found at a consignment shop. Robert wore the only suit he owned. They'd had dinner at the same diner where they met. The owner had given them free pie. It hadn't been perfect. Robert knew that. He worked long hours, sometimes 6 days a week. Sometimes he came home too tired to talk. Sometimes he fell asleep on the couch with the TV still on. And Kelly had struggled. She quit 3 jobs in 2 years. Said the managers were rude. The customers were demanding. The pay wasn't worth it. Robert had never pushed her, never told her she needed to work. They got by on his income. It was tight sometimes, but they managed. They'd argued about money, sure. Robert liked keeping track of spending, liked knowing what came in and what went out. Kelly called it controlling. He called it responsible. They'd fought about it more than once, but they'd also still eaten dinner together most nights, still slept in the same bed, still talked about their days. Robert had thought they were fine. Not perfect, but fine. Apparently, he'd been wrong. Robert closed the email and opened her messages folder. More conversations, more complaints, more plans. Kelly telling people she felt trapped, that Robert was boring, that she wanted more from life. One message to a friend named Tessa stood out. Kelly had written it 6 months ago. I can't do this anymore. I need out, but I need money to get out. I'm working on it. Tessa had responded asking what she meant by working on it. Kelly's reply made Robert's jaw tighten. Let's just say I'm making sure I won't leave empty-handed. He'll never see it coming. Robert leaned back in the chair. The office was dark except for the laptop screen. Outside, he could hear crickets starting their evening songs. A car drove past on the road. Normal sounds. Normal night. Nothing felt normal. He'd been married to someone who'd spent months planning to leave him. Months smiling at him while documenting every perceived slight. Months sleeping beside him while telling strangers he was the problem. Robert didn't feel heartbroken. That surprised him. He thought he should. Thought there should be tears or shouting or something that looked like grief. Instead, he felt cold, analytical, like he was looking at a blueprint that didn't add up and needed to figure out where the mistake was. Except there was no mistake. This was intentional, calculated. She'd meant every part of it. Robert opened a new folder. This one had no label, just a date from 3 months ago. Inside was a single document, a PDF. He clicked it open. Insurance policy. Life insurance. The policyholder was Kelly Mercer. The insured was Robert Mercer. Death benefit, $500,000. Robert read the policy details. She'd taken out 4 months ago, right around the time those emails started. The timing wasn't coincidence. He scrolled through the paperwork. She'd listed herself as the sole beneficiary. She'd paid the first premium from their joint account. A small amount, easy to miss in a normal flow of bills and groceries. Robert closed the laptop. He sat in the dark office for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked, each second loud and distinct. Kelly hadn't just planned to leave him. She planned for more than that. The policy, the careful draining of accounts, the way she documented him as controlling and difficult, building a narrative, building a story where she was the victim. Robert stood up. His body moved on autopilot now. He walked to the kitchen and pulled a beer from the fridge, one of the few things she'd left behind. He opened it and took a long drink. The bottle was cold in his hand. The beer tasted like nothing. He thought about calling her, demanding answers, asking why. But he knew why. She'd written it all down. She wanted more. She wanted different. She wanted out. And she wanted to make sure leaving him would set her up for whatever came next. Robert set the beer down without finishing it. He wasn't a drinking man normally. Didn't see the point. The beer tasted sour now anyway. He walked back to the spare room and sat down at the laptop again. He needed to know everything. Needed to see exactly what he was dealing with. He spent the next 3 hours reading. Every email, every message, every note. She'd been thorough. He'd give her that. She'd thought of everything, or thought she had. At 11 o'clock, Robert found something she'd missed. A document saved in a hidden folder. The folder was labeled Recordings and tucked inside a subfolder inside a subfolder. Easy to overlook unless you were looking for it. Robert clicked it open. Inside were 3 audio files. He clicked the first one. His own voice playback. A conversation from months ago about their budget. Kelly had recorded him without his knowledge. The recording was edited to make him sound harsh, demanding. She'd cut out her own responses, caught the context. The second recording was similar. Another argument. Another edit. The third recording was different. This time it was just Kelly's voice. Robert clicked play and listened. Kelly was talking to herself, practicing, rehearsing what sounded like a statement. I'm devastated. Robert and I had our problems, but I never imagined something like this could happen. He'd been working such long hours. The stress must have been too much. I just wish he'd talked to me. Maybe I could have helped. Maybe I could have done something. There was a pause in the recording. Then Kelly's voice again. Less practiced. More natural. That sounds good. Sad but not too sad. Shocked but believable. They'll buy it. Another pause. $500,000. $500,000. I can go anywhere with that. Do anything. Start completely over. And no one will ever know it was anything but a terrible accident. The recording ended. Robert sat perfectly still. The room felt colder now. Or maybe that was just him. She hadn't just taken out a policy on him. She'd planned for him to die. Practiced her grief. Prepared her story for when whatever accident she had in mind finally happened. Robert saved the file to a thumb drive he found in the desk drawer. Then he copied every email, every message, every document, everything she'd written about him, everything she'd planned. He didn't delete anything from her laptop. Left it exactly as he'd found it. Evidence only mattered if it stayed untouched. By midnight, Robert had 3 thumb drives full of Kelly's own words. Her own plans. Her own voice admitting things she never meant anyone else to hear. He put the drives in his truck, locked them in the glove compartment. Then he came back inside and went to bed. The sheets smelled like her shampoo, some floral scent she'd always liked. Robert lay on his side of the bed, the side he'd slept on for 3 years. He stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow he'd start making calls. But tonight he just needed to process what his marriage had actually been. Not a partnership, not love. A long setup for a payday. Robert closed his eyes. Sleep didn't come easy, but when it did, he didn't dream. The next morning, Robert woke at 5. His body was used to early starts. Years of construction work had programmed his internal clock to beat the sun. He made coffee in the kitchen. The pot was old. They'd talked about replacing it. Kelly said she wanted one of those fancy single-serve machines. Robert had said the old one worked fine. The conversation felt like it had happened in a different life now. The coffee tasted bitter. He drank it anyway. Stood at the window watching the sun come up over the hills behind his house. Red Hollow was a small town. 3,000 people. Everyone knew everyone. News traveled fast. Robert wondered how long before people started talking. Before Kelly's story reached ears that mattered. He needed to move first. Robert sat down at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen. Old school. His father had taught him to write things down. Memories failed. Paper didn't. He started making a list. Every account, every card, every automatic payment, everything that connected them financially. By 7 o'clock, he had 2 pages filled. Joint checking, joint savings, credit cards in both names, the mortgage, utilities, car insurance, phone plan. Robert picked up his phone and started making calls. First call was to the bank. A woman named Patricia answered. She sounded cheerful. Too cheerful for someone about to ruin her morning. First National Bank. This is Patricia. How can I help you today? I need to freeze my joint checking account, Robert said, and remove authorized access for my wife. Silence. Then typing. May I ask the reason for this request, Mr. Mercer? My wife withdrew most of our money without my knowledge and left the country. More typing. Patricia's voice lost its cheerfulness. I see. I'll need to verify your identity, and then we can process that request. This may take a few minutes. I've got time. 20 minutes later, the joint account was frozen. Kelly couldn't touch what little remained. She also couldn't access his personal account anymore. Patricia walked him through removing her authorization. Made notes in their system about potential fraud. Do you want to file a formal complaint? Patricia asked. Not yet, Robert said. Just lock it down. Understood. Is there anything else I can help you with? Yeah. I need copies of all transactions from the last 6 months. Printed and mailed to me. We can do that. They'll arrive in 5 to 7 business days. Robert hung up and crossed the bank off his list. Next was credit cards. 3 of them, all joint accounts. He called each company, froze each card, requested transaction histories. The customer service representatives all sounded the same. Scripted sympathy, efficient processing. One woman asked if he was okay. Robert told her he was fine. She didn't sound convinced. By noon, Robert had locked down every account they shared. Kelly would try to use a card somewhere in Spain, and it would decline. She'd check her banking app and see everything frozen. She'd panic. Good. Robert made himself lunch. A sandwich with the last of the bread and some old turkey he found in the back of the fridge. It tasted dry. He ate anyway. His phone rang while he was washing his plate. Unknown number. Robert almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello, Mr. Mercer? A man's voice. Professional. Clipped. Speaking. This is James Chun from Midwest Life Insurance. I'm calling regarding a policy we have on file listing you as the insured party and your wife, Kelly Mercer, as the beneficiary. Robert set his plate down. I'm listening. We've received some documentation that's raised concerns. I'd like to discuss it with you, if you have a moment. What kind of documentation? I'm not at liberty to say over the phone, but I can tell you it was submitted anonymously through our fraud reporting portal. It relates to the circumstances under which the policy was taken out and some recorded statements we found concerning. Robert smiled. He'd sent that documentation last night, 3 in the morning. Uploaded everything to the insurance company's fraud website. Included the recording of Kelly practicing her grief. I'm happy to discuss it, Robert said. What do you need from me? We'd like you to come in for an interview. Bring any documentation you have regarding your marriage and your wife's recent activities. We take fraud very seriously. How's tomorrow at 10? I'll be there. James gave him the address. A office building in Lexington. About an hour's drive. Robert wrote it down. After he hung up, Robert sat at the kitchen table again. The house was quiet. No TV on. No music. Just the sound of the refrigerator running and the clock ticking on the wall. Kelly had made this easy for him. She documented everything herself, saved every plan, recorded her own confession. All Robert had to do was collect it and hand it to people who cared about $500,000 changing hands under suspicious circumstances. He didn't feel guilty. That surprised him too. He thought he might. Thought there might be some hesitation about destroying his wife's plans so completely. But she'd planned to destroy more than his bank account. She'd planned to destroy him. Actually him. Not just financially, permanently. Robert had grown up in a house where you learned fast that the world didn't know you fairness. His mother had worked herself to exhaustion. His father had walked away when Robert was 6. Left a note similar to Kelly's. Short, cold, final. Robert's mother never chased him, never begged, never broke down. She'd gone to work the next day, come home, made dinner, tucked Robert into bed. Then she'd sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills and figured out how to make it work. She'd taught Robert something important. Emotion was fine. Feeling hurt was natural. But emotion didn't pay bills, didn't solve problems, didn't change reality. What changed reality was clear thinking and consistent action. Robert had carried that lesson into everything. His work, his relationships, his marriage. When a well didn't hold, you didn't cry about it. You redid it. When a measurement was wrong, you didn't blame the tape measure. You measured again. When your wife tried to set you up for an insurance fraud scheme, you didn't fall apart. You documented everything and let her own words bury her. Robert's phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. Why are my accounts frozen? What did you do? Kelly. She must have tried to use a card. Found out she was locked out. Robert stared at the message. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. He could respond, could explain, could tell her he knew everything. Instead, he deleted the message and blocked the number. Silence was louder than any argument he could make. His phone buzzed again 20 minutes later. Different number. Same message, different words. Robert, we need to talk. This is insane. Unfreeze the accounts. He blocked that number too. But his phone rang. Another unknown number. He didn't answer. It rang again and again. Different numbers each time. Kelly was persistent. He'd give her that. Robert turned his phone off and set on the counter. She could call all she wanted. He had nothing to say to her. Instead, he went out to his truck and drove to the hardware store. He needed new locks for the house. Kelly still had her key. Even if she was in Spain, even if she stayed there, he wanted her out of his house completely. The hardware store was run by an old man named Earl. He'd sold Robert the materials to build his deck, helped him figure out the right screws for the railing. Good man. Honest. Fair prices. Earl looked up when the bell over the door rang. Robert, didn't expect to see you till next week. Thought you were still on that bridge job. Finished early, Robert said. It wasn't technically a lie. He had finished his part. Just came home to a different kind of work. What can I do for you? Need new locks. Front door and back door. Deadbolts if you've got them. Earl studied him for a moment. Everything all right? It will be. Earl didn't push. That was another thing Robert appreciated about him. He just nodded and walked to the aisle with door hardware. That's a good one's here. Schlag. Best in the business. Robert bought 2 sets. Brass finish. Heavy duty. The kind of locks that said keep out and minted. Back home, he spent the afternoon installing them. Removed the old locks. Drilled new holes where needed. The work was methodical. Satisfying. Each turn of the screwdriver felt like progress. By evening, he had new locks on both doors. The old keys were useless now. Kelly's key opened nothing. Robert stood on his porch and tested the front door. Locked solid. No wiggle. No give. The sun was setting again. Another day gone. Another day of his life he'd never get back. He thought about Kelly in North Carolina. Because he found that too on her laptop. She wasn't in Spain. That had been a lie. She was staying with some friend he'd never met in a beach town he'd never heard of. She'd wanted him to think she was further away than she was. Harder to reach. Harder to chase. Robert wasn't chasing. He was documenting. There was a difference. He went inside and made dinner. Eggs and toast. Simple. Fast. He ate standing at the counter. The house felt different with the new locks. More his. Less hers. His phone was still off. He turned it back on and saw 47 missed calls. 15 messages. All from different numbers. He deleted them without reading. Blocked each number methodically. Then he opened his email and started writing. Professional emails. Polite. Clinical. First email went to his lawyer. A man named Bill Thompson who'd handled his mother's estate when she passed. Robert explained the situation. Attached some of the documents from Kelly's laptop. Asked about divorce proceedings and asset protection. Second email went to the police department. Non-emergency contact. He didn't file a formal complaint. Just documented that his wife had left. That she drained their accounts. That he wanted on record in case she tried to claim something different later. Third email went to the insurance company. Just a confirmation of his appointment tomorrow. A note that he'd be bringing additional documentation. Robert hit send on all 3. Then he closed his laptop and sat in the living room. The TV stayed off. The house stayed quiet. He thought about Kelly. About whether she was scared yet. Whether she'd realized her plan had collapsed. Whether she understood what was coming. Probably not. She'd been so confident. So sure of herself. So certain Robert would be the easy mark she'd painted him as. But Robert had never been easy. He'd just been patient. There was a difference there, too. The insurance office in Lexington was in a bland brick building downtown. Robert arrived 15 minutes early. He parked his truck and sat for a moment. The building had glass doors and a small lobby visible from the street. Professional. Corporate. The kind of place where people made decisions about large sums of money. Robert grabbed the folder from his passenger seat. Inside were printouts, emails, bank statements, screenshots, and a thumb drive with the audio files. Everything Kelly had created. Everything she'd saved. Her own evidence against herself. He walked inside. The lobby was quiet. Beige carpet. Neutral walls. A receptionist sat behind a desk. She looked up and smiled. Can I help you? I have a 10 o'clock with James Chun. Robert Mercer? Yes, ma'am. She picked up her phone and pressed a button. Mr. Chun? Mr. Mercer is here for his 10 o'clock. Pause. I'll send him back. She hung up and gestured to a hallway. Third door on the left. Robert walked down the hallway. His boots made soft sounds on the carpet. The third door on the left was open. Inside was a small office. Desk. 2 chairs. Filing cabinets. A window overlooking the parking lot. James Chun stood up when Robert entered. He was younger than Robert expected. Maybe 40. Wire-rimmed glasses. Dark suit. Firm handshake. Mr. Mercer. Thank you for coming in. Call me Robert. Robert, please have a seat. James gestured to one of the chairs across from his desk. Robert sat down, set his folder on his lap. James sat behind his desk and opened a file. I want to be upfront with you. The documentation we received through our fraud portal raised significant red flags. We've already begun an investigation into the policy on your life. What kind of red flags? The timing of the policy, the size of the benefit, and most concerning, an audio file where the beneficiary appears to be planning your death and rehearsing a statement for after it happens. Robert nodded. That'll be my wife. Kelly, you're aware of the recording? I found it on her laptop, along with everything else. Robert opened his folder and slid a stack of papers across the desk. These are emails between Kelly and various people where she discusses planning to leave me, taking money from our accounts, making sure I wouldn't suspect, and setting herself up for afterward. James picked up the papers and started reading. His expression didn't change. Professional poker face. But Robert could see his eyes moving faster as he read, could see the slight tightening around his mouth. There's more, Robert said. He pulled out the bank statements. These show the withdrawal pattern from our joint account over the last week. Small amounts, just under the fraud detection limit. All while I was out of town on a work trip. James took those too, scanned them quickly. And this, Robert pulled out the thumb drive, has the original audio files, unedited, along with some other recordings she made without my knowledge. James took the thumb drive, turned it over in his hand. You understand that by providing this, you're potentially incriminating your wife in insurance fraud. I understand. And you're comfortable with that? She was comfortable planning my death for $500,000. I'm comfortable making sure she doesn't get away with it. James set the thumb drive down on his desk, leaned back in his chair. Can I ask you something, Robert? Sure. How are you doing with all this? Personally, I mean. Robert considered the question. I'm tired, but I'm fine. Most people in your situation would be falling apart. Most people didn't grow up watching their mother work 2 jobs after their father left. Most people didn't learn early that falling apart doesn't help. James nodded slowly. Fair enough. He tapped the folder on his desk. Here's where we are. Based on what you've provided and what we've already reviewed, we're suspending this policy pending a full investigation. Kelly won't be able to claim anything even if something did happen to you. Good. We'll also be referring this to law enforcement. What she planned constitutes conspiracy to commit fraud at minimum. Possibly more, depending on what they find. I've already contacted the police. Documented everything with them, too. Smart. James pulled out a business card and slid it across the desk. That's my direct line. If Kelly contacts you, if anything else happens, call me immediately. Robert took the card and put it in his wallet. What happens now? We continue our investigation. We'll likely need to interview Kelly. We'll review all the documentation you've provided. Build a case. If everything checks out the way it appears to, she'll face criminal charges. How long does that take? Depends. Could be weeks. Could be months. Fraud investigations move slowly, but they move. Robert stood up, shook James's hand again. Thank you. Thank you for coming forward. Most people wouldn't have the presence of mind to document everything the way you did. Like I said, I learned early. Robert walked out of the office, out through the lobby, back to his truck. The sun was higher now, warmer. A good day. The kind of day where people went to parks or took their kids to get ice cream. Robert drove home. The hour back to Red Hollow gave him time to think. Time to process what he'd just set in motion. Kelly was going to face consequences. Real ones. Legal ones. The kind that followed you. The kind that showed up on background checks and made people ask questions. Robert didn't feel joy about it. That was the thing people might not understand. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't about hurting her because she'd hurt him. This was about making sure the truth was known. About making sure her plan didn't succeed. About protecting himself from someone who'd proven willing to go to unimaginable lengths for money. When Robert got home, he checked his phone. 23 more missed calls. 11 more messages. He blocked the numbers without reading the messages. Kelly was getting desperate. Good. Desperation made people sloppy. The next few days passed in a strange, quiet rhythm. Robert went to work. Picked up a smaller local job doing concrete repair. Came home. Made dinner. Slept. His phone kept ringing. Different numbers. Always blocked. Then, 5 days after his meeting with James Chun, the calls stopped. Robert noticed the silence immediately. Checked his phone multiple times that evening. Nothing. No calls. No messages. No Kelly trying different numbers to reach him. He wondered what had happened. Then the next afternoon, he got his answer. An email from James Chun. Subject line, update. Robert opened it at the kitchen table. Robert, wanted to give you an update. We made contact with Kelly yesterday. She's currently in North Carolina staying with a friend. When we informed her of our investigation and the evidence we'd reviewed, she initially denied everything. Said the recordings were taken out of context, that the emails didn't mean what they appear to mean. Then we played her own voice. The recording where she practices her statement about your death. She went quiet after that. Her lawyer has been in touch. They're attempting to negotiate. We've made it clear there's nothing to negotiate. The policy is void. The investigation is proceeding. Local authorities in North Carolina have also been in contact with her. She'll likely be facing charges there, as well as in Kentucky, depending on where the crimes were committed. I'll keep you updated as things progress. In the meantime, stay vigilant. Let us know if she attempts to contact you. James. Robert read the email twice. Then he closed his laptop and sat back in his chair. Kelly had a lawyer now. That meant she knew how serious this was. Meant she was scared. Robert remembered her voice in that recording. So confident. So certain. $500,000. I can go anywhere with that. She'd been right about one thing. $500,000 could change a life. She'd just been wrong about whose life it would change. Robert went to work the next morning like normal. The concrete repair job was in an old church on the edge of town. The foundation had cracks, water damage, years of settling that needed to be corrected. He worked methodically, mixed concrete, filled cracks, smoothed edges. The work was physical, demanding. It kept his mind occupied. At lunch, he sat in his truck and ate a sandwich from the gas station. His phone rang. Local number this time. One he recognized. Bill Thompson, his lawyer. Robert answered. Bill. Robert. Got some news for you. I'm listening. Filed your divorce papers this morning. Kelly was served about an hour ago at the address you gave me in North Carolina. Her lawyer called me 20 minutes later. What did they say? They want to talk settlement. Kelly's willing to give back what money's left if you agree not to press charges. How much is left? About $4,000. She's burned through the rest. Robert did the math in his head. She'd taken over $6,000. Spent $2,000 in less than 2 weeks. Tell them no. No to the money or no to dropping charges. Both. Robert, I have to ask. Are you sure? $4,000 is better than nothing. I'm sure. She doesn't get to steal from me and then buy her way out when she gets caught. Bill was quiet for a moment. All right, I'll relay that. But Robert, you should know. Her lawyer is going to make this nasty. They'll try to paint you as vindictive, controlling. They'll use her emails and texts to build a narrative. Let them. Everything she wrote is either a lie or a plan to commit fraud. Either way doesn't help her. Fair point. I'll be in touch. Robert hung up and finished his sandwich. The church foundation wasn't going to fix itself. By evening, the concrete was setting properly. Robert cleaned his tools and packed up his truck. The sun was low again. Long shadows across the parking lot. He drove home. The new locks clicked solidly when he turned his key. Inside, the house smelled like nothing. No cooking, no perfume, no coffee, just empty air. Robert made dinner, grilled chicken and rice. Ate at the kitchen table while reading through some mail that had piled up. Bills mostly. Nothing urgent. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're really going to do this? Destroy me over money? Kelly. New number. She was nothing if not persistent. Robert typed back. Just 4 words. You destroyed yourself. Then he blocked the number. 3 seconds later, another text from a different number. I'm sorry. I was scared. I made mistakes. Please. We can fix this. Robert blocked it. Another number. Robert, please. I'm begging you. Block. Another. You're cruel. I never thought you were cruel. Robert stared at that one for a moment. Read it twice. Then he typed a response. You planned to kill me for insurance money. I documented your own words. There's nothing cruel about protecting myself. He hit send, then blocked the number. The messages stopped after that. Robert set his phone down and sat in the quiet house. He thought about Kelly's last message, about her calling him cruel. She'd recorded herself practicing grief over his planned death. She'd mapped out how to take every dollar they had. She'd built an entire narrative where he was the villain and she was the victim just trying to escape. But telling the truth about what she'd done was cruel. Robert didn't buy it, and he wasn't going to pretend to. The next week brought more developments. James Chun called to say the insurance company was filing criminal charges. Bill Thompson called to say the divorce was moving forward. The police called to schedule an interview about the fraud and potential conspiracy charges. Robert answered every call, provided every document, stayed calm and clear and factual. Kelly's lawyer made noise about Robert being vindictive, about how Kelly had been in a bad mental state, about how the recordings were private thoughts not meant to be evidence. The prosecutors apparently didn't care. Private thoughts or not, they showed intent, planning, premeditation. 1 month after Kelly left, Robert got a call from Bill Thompson. Robert, Kelly's accepting the divorce terms. No contest. She's signing everything tomorrow. What changed? Her lawyer finally explained what she's actually facing. Insurance fraud, conspiracy, theft. She's looking at potential jail time. Trying to fight you on the divorce, too, seemed pointless. So it's done. Soon as the paperwork's filed, you'll be officially divorced in 30 days. Robert thanked Bill and hung up. He was sitting on his porch. Evening again. The crickets were loud tonight. Somewhere down the road a dog was barking. 30 days until it was official. 30 days until Kelly was completely out of his life legally. It felt longer and shorter than he expected at the same time. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the last few months, about how quickly everything had changed. He got up around midnight and went to the kitchen, made coffee even though it was late, sat at the table with the house dark around him. Kelly had wanted to destroy him, take everything, leave him broken. Instead, she destroyed herself. Every email she wrote, every plan she made, every word she recorded, all of it had been the rope she'd eventually hang herself with. Robert hadn't needed to lie, hadn't needed to exaggerate, hadn't needed to make anything up. He just needed to let her own words speak. That was the thing about the truth. You didn't have to dress it up, didn't have to sell it. It just was. And eventually it won. Robert finished his coffee and went back to bed. This time sleep came easier. For months after Kelly left, Robert sold the house. It had never felt right after she was gone. Every room carried memories that had turned sour. The kitchen where they'd argued about money. The bedroom where she'd slept while planning his death. The spare room where she'd documented everything. He didn't need those memories. The house sold fast. Small town. Good neighborhood. Fair price. A young couple bought it. Newlyweds. They walked through and talked about where they'd put furniture, what color they'd paint the walls. They smiled at each other. Robert hoped they'd have better luck than he did. He used the money from the sale to buy a small place closer to the river. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a porch overlooking the water. It was 15 minutes from town, but felt like it was in a different world. Quiet, peaceful. His. Robert moved in on a Saturday. Everything he owned fit in his truck and a small trailer. He'd gotten rid of most of the furniture from the old house. Too many memories attached. Started fresh with pieces from yard sales and secondhand stores. The new place felt right immediately. Clean. Simple. No ghosts. That first evening in the new house, Robert sat on his porch and watched the river. The water moved steadily. Not fast. Not slow. Just constant. Always forward. Never back. He thought about Kelly, about where she was now, what she was doing. He knew she'd been charged. James Chun had called with updates. Insurance fraud. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Theft. The charges had stacked up. Her lawyer had tried to make a deal. The prosecutors had declined. Last Robert heard, she was facing trial in 3 months. Bill Thompson had sent the final divorce decree. Signed. Official. Robert was no longer married. Kelly was no longer his problem. She kept trying to contact him, though. Different numbers. Different emails. Sometimes apologizing. Sometimes angry. Sometimes begging. Robert blocked them all. He had nothing to say to her. Nothing she needed to hear from him. The trial started on a Tuesday in September. Robert didn't attend. He could have. The prosecutor had said he was welcome, but he didn't see the point. His testimony had already been given. His evidence already submitted. Everything Kelly had written. Everything she'd planned. Everything she'd recorded. It was all there in the court record. He didn't need to watch her face the consequences in person. Instead, Robert went fishing. Spent the morning on the river with a pole and some old tackle. Didn't catch much. Didn't care. The piece was the point. His phone buzzed around noon. A text from James Chun. Verdict came in. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing in 2 weeks. Robert read the message. Set his phone down. Cast his line again. The water rippled where the lure hit. Circles spreading outward. Then fading. Then gone. 2 weeks later, James sent another text. Kelly got 18 months. Out in 12 with good behavior. Plus restitution for what she took. Permanent fraud flags on her record. Won't be able to get insurance easily again. Robert didn't respond. Just noted the information and moved on with his day. 18 months wasn't long, but it was something. And the permanent record would follow her. Every job application. Every background check. Every attempt to start over somewhere new. She'd wanted to escape Red Hollow. Escape him. Escape her life. She'd escaped into something much worse. Robert thought about that sometimes. Late at night, when the house was quiet and the river sounds filtered through the windows. He thought about whether he felt guilty, whether he should have handled things differently. The answer was always the same. No. Kelly had made her choices. Every email, every plan, every lie, those were hers. Robert had just refused to be her victim, had refused to let her story become the truth. Some people might call that cold, might say he should have forgiven her, given her another chance. But those people hadn't seen the recording, hadn't heard her practice her grief, hadn't read her plans for his death. Those people didn't understand that some doors closed once. And when they did, you didn't force them back open. You walked away. One evening in October, Robert was sitting on his porch when a truck pulled into his driveway. He didn't recognize it at first. Then Earl from the hardware store climbed out. "Earl, what brings you out here? Heard you moved. Wanted to see the place." Earl walked up to the porch and looked around. "Nice spot. I like it. Mind if I sit?" "Help yourself." Earl settled into the other chair. They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the river, listening to the evening sounds. "Heard about Kelly," Earl said finally. "About what happened?" Robert nodded. "Small town. News traveled." He'd expected this conversation eventually. "You doing all right?" Earl asked. "I am. Good." Earl pulled out a pack of gum and offered a piece. Robert took it. "For what it's worth, Robert, you did the right thing. Some people don't think so. Some people didn't see what you saw, didn't know what you knew." Earl chewed his gum slowly. "Woman planned to hurt you. You protected yourself. Nothing wrong with that. Doesn't feel like victory, though. Victory rarely does. Mostly just feels like being done." Robert considered that. Being done. That was accurate. He wasn't happy. Wasn't sad. Wasn't angry. Just done. "You'll rebuild," Earl said. "You're young enough. Got time. Got this nice place. You'll be fine. Appreciate that." Earl stood up. "Better get going. Wife's expecting me for dinner. But if you need anything, Robert, you let me know. Good lucks. Bad lucks. Whatever." Robert smiled for the first time in weeks. "I'll keep that in mind." After Earl left, Robert sat on the porch until dark. The temperature dropped. The river sounds got louder as everything else got quiet. He thought about rebuilding, about what that meant, about whether he wanted to. The answer wasn't clear yet, but he had time to figure it out. The months passed. Fall turned to winter. Robert worked, fished, kept to himself mostly. People in town knew his story now. Some were sympathetic. Some were judgmental. Most just stayed out of it. Robert didn't care much either way. Their opinions didn't change what had happened. Didn't change what Kelly had planned. Didn't change the truth. Christmas came and went. Robert spent alone. Made himself a small dinner. Watched some television. Went to bed early. New Year's came and went the same way. By February, a year had passed since Kelly left. A full rotation of seasons. A full cycle of working and living and figuring out what came next. Robert stood on his porch on the anniversary. Same time of day she'd left. Evening. The sky that bruised purple color. He thought about the note on the kitchen table. 5 words. "I'm in Spain. Don't call me." She'd wanted him to believe she was far away, unreachable, gone forever. Instead, she was in a prison in Kentucky, serving time for the plans she'd thought were so clever. Robert didn't feel satisfaction about that, just a quiet sense of closure. The story had ended. Not the way Kelly wanted, not the way she'd planned, but had ended. And Robert was still here, still standing, still moving forward. That was enough. A week later, Robert was at the river fishing when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello, Mr. Mercer? This is Sarah Daniels. I'm a counselor at the correctional facility where Kelly is serving her sentence. Robert's grip on the phone tightened. What can I do for you? Kelly has requested to speak with you. She's been trying to reach you through letters, but I understand you've been returning them unopened. That's correct. She wanted me to call, to ask if you'd be willing to meet with her. Just once. She says she has things she needs to say. Robert watched the river, the water moving steadily forward. No, Mr. Mercer, I understand this is difficult, but sometimes closure requires. I have closure. What I don't have is any interest in hearing what Kelly needs to say. Tell her I wish her well. Tell her I hope she uses her time to reflect and improve. But tell her I won't be visiting, won't be taking calls, won't be reading letters. Silence on the other end. Then, I'll relay that message. Thank you. Robert hung up, set his phone down on the tackle box, cast his line again. The lure hit the water with a small splash. Sank. Disappeared. Kelly wanted closure, wanted to say her piece, wanted something from him. But Robert had given her enough already, had given her years of his life, years of trust, years of believing they were building something together. She'd burned all of that for money and freedom. Now she had neither, and Robert had peace. That was all the closure either of them needed. The sun set over the river. Robert packed up his gear and drove home. The small house welcomed him. Warm light through the windows. Simple, clean, his. Inside, he made dinner, ate at the small table by the window, washed his dishes, settled into a chair on the porch with a book. The night air was cool, but not cold. Spring was coming. You could feel it, that subtle shift, that promise of renewal. Robert read until his eyes got tired. Then he went inside and got ready for bed. Tomorrow he had work, a garage foundation that needed repair. Straightforward job, good pay, honest work. Tomorrow the river would still be there, still moving forward. Tomorrow Kelly would still be in prison, still facing the consequences of her choices. Tomorrow Robert would still be free. That was enough. That was everything. He turned off the lights and climbed into bed. The sheets were clean. The mattress was firm. The room was quiet. Robert closed his eyes and felt the weight that had lived in his chest for so long finally lift completely. Some people got what they deserved. Some people got worse than they deserved. And some people just got the truth. The truth was enough. It always had been. Robert slept well that night. Better than he had in months. Maybe better than he had in years. And when he woke the next morning, the sun was shining through his window. The river was flowing outside his door. And his life was completely his own. No ghosts. No regrets. No looking back. Just forward. Always forward. Like the river.